Hey, more packages arrived today, I announced. What's in them? Henry asked with a curious glint. Oh, those are the fishing gear I ordered. A colleague at work invited me to go fishing, so I bought some new stuff. Fishing gear, huh? I couldn't shake the unease seeing my husband Henry's excitement. Didn't you buy fishing gear when we first got married and never use it? I gently reminded him. I was too busy to go then, but that old gear is outdated. If I'm going, I need new stuff, he defended. I see. So, what's up? You got a problem with that? It's not that, but my colleague was kind enough to invite me. I can't just say no. I have work. You know I can't just dwell on sentiment like you do. I tried to understand Henry's reasoning, but it was hard to believe we were a couple sharing the same sorrow when Henry seemed so happy as if nothing had happened. My name is Sarah, I'm 33 years old. We've been married for 6 years. Henry was making these fishing plans just 2 months after our daughter passed away. I still couldn't get over my grief, but I tried to comprehend how Henry seemed so unaffected. Our lives had been shaken before. Henry's father, Richard, passed away in our 2nd year of marriage. He adored our daughter and loved her more than anything. I wonder if they're together in heaven now. That's the only thought that comforts me. Before he died, Richard told me, "Don't let Henry and your mother-in-law Eleanor handle the money." Richard was a gentle soul, always looking out for me. Having no family of my own, he was like a real father to me, and his death hit me hard. Our daughter, Sophie, was born a year after our marriage. She was bright and cheerful, always bringing light into our lives. Mom, everyone's so jealous of my packed lunch. I bet it's the best in preschool. Mom will have to try even harder, I would smile. Mom, can I ask for a little favor? What is it, sweetheart? Can you make more food for my next packed lunch? I want to eat more. Can you eat that much? I won't leave any, I promise. Okay, I'll do it, I promised myself. The following month, Sophie's preschool teacher quietly told me something that filled my heart with pride and sorrow. There is a child in class who doesn't have a mom and whose dad is too busy with work to make a packed lunch. He always brings just a supermarket sandwich and an apple. Sophie has been sharing her packed lunch with this child. She told him, "My packed lunch is more than I can eat, so please help me eat it." The child was so grateful. Hearing this, I was so proud of Sophie. She was such a kind and wonderful child. Every expression of hers, her angry face, her crying face, and her brightest smile, was a treasure to me. And then, one day, that treasure was suddenly gone. The night before, Sophie went to bed as usual, just a bit earlier than average. "I'm sleepy," she said, and I thought she was just tired from preschool. After watching Sophie start to breathe softly in her sleep, I left the bed. Usually, Sophie and I slept together. After she fell asleep, I cleaned up dinner, took a shower after Eleanor did, and finished cleaning the shower room. By the time I returned to the bedroom, it was almost midnight. Henry was away on a business trip that night. Sophie was lying quietly in bed. I thought she was sleeping well, but I noticed something was wrong as I was about to get into bed. I couldn't hear Sophie's breathing. What? I reached out to touch Sophie's cheek. It was noticeably colder than usual. "Sophie, what's wrong?" I whispered, but Sophie was utterly unresponsive. I couldn't understand what was happening, but I knew I had to call an ambulance. I jumped into the ambulance with Sophie, but as soon as the paramedics saw her, they looked at me with a confused looks on their faces. They rushed her to the hospital. "Sophie, you'll be okay, right? You'll get better once we're at the hospital, right?" I held Sophie's cold hand, repeating the exact words to myself. But the first thing the doctor said when we arrived was, "I'm sorry, but she's already." I became frantic. I begged the doctor to examine Sophie over and over. It couldn't be true. It just couldn't happen like this. She was fine before bed. The cause was unknown. "These sudden events can happen even with small children," the doctor said. I had heard such things but never imagined it could happen to my child. Sophie and I had only lived together for 4 short years. I thought we had decades ahead of us. I couldn't believe she was suddenly gone. I panicked and passed out. Henry and Eleanor, who had been notified, were there when I woke up. I realized I had forgotten to call Eleanor when I left the house. Where's Sophie? I hoped it was a dream, but Henry said she was gone. How can this be? Why? Neither Henry nor Eleanor said anything, but their eyes seemed to say, Sarah was right. I thought the same for a while. I was almost catatonic. I cried looking at Sophie's things, watching her favorite cartoons, and remembering her in everything I did. At first, Henry didn't say anything, but gradually, he sighed audibly and muttered under his breath, "She's so morbid." Eleanor, too, started to nag me. "Hey, how long are you going to be in a daze? Housework is Sarah's job. Could you please get it together?" I'm sorry. I knew I shouldn't be like this, but my heart was heavy, and I couldn't function as efficiently as before. Yet, as they say, time heals. About 6 months later, I started to manage the daily chores normally again. Henry did cry at the funeral, but he wasn't exactly what you would call a doting father. He preferred playing games over spending time with Sophie. Which is why Sophie wasn't very attached to Henry. Maybe that's why he wasn't as heartbroken. He didn't feel much of a sense of being a parent. But who else will mourn for Sophie, our daughter who only lived for 4 years, if not her parents? Yet about a month after Sophie's death, Henry returned to his usual spendthrift self, enjoying shopping and browsing the web. When Sophie died, Henry and Eleanor looked at me as if it were my fault. It's Sarah's fault, but they didn't say anything, probably because they weren't as heartbroken about her absence as I was. I didn't expect them to grieve the same way, but I wished Henry, as a parent who lost a child, would have been more supportive. On the other hand, Eleanor went back to her routine within a week, shopping and going out with friends, laughing as if Sophie had never existed. When Sophie was born, Eleanor frowned upon seeing her face. "She looks more like Sarah than Henry. We can't expect much from her future," she would say. She often ignored Sophie and seemed reluctant to interact with her, probably not feeling any particular affection. She didn't shed a tear at the funeral. Their attitudes have always been a point of contention for me, and almost a year passed since Sophie's death. Seeing Henry and Eleanor happily shopping, I felt an indescribable frustration. They never talked about Sophie's picture. I wondered how they could act so normally. I thought that we couldn't understand each other. Then, one day, Henry and Eleanor unusually suggested we go out together. "Where are we going?" I asked, skeptical. "How about somewhere with fresh air to change our mood?" Henry suggested. "Sarah, you've been between home and the supermarket since Sophie passed. That's why you're so down," Eleanor added. "I've been worried about you too, Sarah," Henry said. "You've been so worried, you, Eleanor?" I couldn't help the sarcasm. Of course. Sarah is the wife of our dear son. I've been trying hard for your sake," Eleanor insisted. I couldn't believe that, but a part of me felt a little happy to hear it. "How about hiking for a change?" Henry proposed. With a mixture of reluctance and a glimmer of hope, I agreed. A change of scenery may help, even if only a little. Hiking. Going somewhere with fresh air might lift your spirits, Henry suggested. "I want Sarah to feel a bit better." "You thought that?" I asked, surprised. "Of course. I'm your husband, it's natural to worry about my wife," he responded earnestly. "But you didn't seem that down." I was holding it together. If I got down, the house would become too gloomy. "So let's go hiking." I wondered if they cared. It was hard to believe, but Henry added, "Sophie would want you to be happy, Sarah. Think of this as a tribute to her." That moved me. I knew Sophie wouldn't want me to cry forever. I've always known it in my head. "But I've never hiked before," I admitted. "Don't worry. Even I can climb it. It's more like a light hike," Henry reassured me. Well, if Henry and Eleanor insist, great. I'm looking forward to it. And so I agreed to go hiking with Henry and Eleanor. We drove to the foot of the mountain and started our ascent. It was sunny, and many people were around, which felt reassuring. But as we reached the midway point, the crowd thinned. Despite being told it was a beginner's course, I was surprised by the roughness. Yet Henry and Eleanor walked with ease, familiar with the terrain. "Hey, let's take this path," Henry suggested. "Huh? Yeah, it looks less crowded. Let's go that way." "But shouldn't we follow the path everyone else is taking?" "It's fine. I've been here before and know the way. This path is straightforward, and you can't get lost. If Henry says it's okay, then it must be, I thought, trying to muster confidence. Trust me, Sarah, there's a scenic spot just ahead. You'll be amazed. Before finishing his sentence, Henry started walking down the path, followed by Eleanor. Reluctantly, I followed them. But the further we went, the path became more rugged, almost like a trail for animals rather than a proper path. Wait, are you sure we're on the right path? Can we get through here? Don't worry, we'll reach a wider path soon. Just keep up, Henry said with confidence. Henry and Eleanor continued, seemingly sure of the way. Eleanor, now 60, was surprisingly agile, walking more effortlessly than I was. Soon, they were far ahead. I tried to keep up, but my doubts grew with each step. The terrain was getting rougher, and I felt increasingly uneasy. My breath came in short gasps, and I struggled to maintain my footing. Henry, Eleanor, wait up, I called out, but they were too far ahead to hear me. The path was becoming treacherous, and I began to fear I might lose sight of them entirely. I clung to the thought that Sophie would want me to be strong. But the farther I went, the more I questioned their intentions. Their figures became intermittently visible through the dense foliage. Wait, don't leave me behind here. I called out desperately. Hurry up, we'll run out of daylight. Henry's voice echoed from the distance. I hurried but couldn't catch up. Their heads, once visible, were now out of sight. Henry, Eleanor, I called out in fear, but no reply came. As I rushed forward, I lost sight of them completely. I didn't know which way to go. What should I do? I was lost, and the word, stranded, echoed in my mind. This can't be happening. I should have stayed put, thinking Henry would return for me. But as time passed, neither Henry nor Eleanor appeared. There was no sign of anyone approaching. Knowing I couldn't stand there forever, I started walking again, filled with fear. My anxiety grew. I couldn't tell which way it was. I decided to retrace my steps, but finding my tracks on this unmarked path was challenging. I felt like I was getting deeper into the wilderness. Panicking, I stumbled several times, each fall draining more energy. Soon, the surroundings began to darken, and my anxiety intensified. If it turned to night, I wouldn't be able to descend. The temperature dropped as evening approached. It was late March, but the nights were still cold, especially in the mountains. What would happen if I had to spend the night here? Exhausted, I collapsed against a large tree. I can't go on, I voiced my despair. Thoughts of this being the end of my life crept into my consciousness. Fading in my dimming awareness, I heard a voice I had longed to hear. Mom, Mom. Shocked, I opened my eyes. There was my dear Sophie. Sophie? Is that you? I called out. Sophie smiled at me. Ah, I must be in heaven, I thought hazily. I hugged Sophie, but she seemed to slip through my arms, flying away. Sophie, Mom, over here. Sophie turned and started running. Wait, I reflexively stood up to follow Sophie, feeling strangely energized despite my earlier exhaustion. This couldn't be the real world, but if it meant holding Sophie again, I didn't care if it was a dream. I followed her through the woods, my heart pounding with hope and desperation. Sophie's figure flitted through the trees, always out of reach, guiding me through the darkening forest. I didn't know where I was going, but I trusted her. Sophie, please don't leave me again, I pleaded, tears streaming down my face. Eventually, we reached a clearing, and I saw a familiar path ahead. Sophie turned to me one last time, her smile radiating warmth and love. Mom, you can make it, she whispered, her voice fading with the wind. With renewed strength, I followed the path, and soon enough, I found my way back to a more familiar trail. The sight of other hikers in the distance filled me with relief. I wasn't alone anymore. As I made my way back down the mountain, I couldn't shake the feeling that Sophie had been guiding me and giving me the strength to carry on. I knew I had to live, not just for myself but for her memory. Reaching the mountain base, I saw Henry and Eleanor waiting by the car, looking anxious. Their faces lit up with surprise and a hint of guilt when they saw me. Sarah, thank God you're safe, Henry exclaimed, rushing over to embrace me. Eleanor looked away, her face flushed. We were so worried about you, she murmured, not meeting my eyes. I realized then that despite everything, I had to find a way to heal, to keep moving forward. Sophie's memory will always be with me, a guiding light in the darkest times. When I thought of Sophie, I naturally felt motivated, invigorated, and chased after her. Sophie, wait, I called out. Sophie turned back, smiling. It felt like playing tag with her, a joyful feeling. Before I knew it, I had reached the foot of the mountain, and Sophie was gone. Sophie, where are you? I called, but she was nowhere to be seen. Had I just seen an illusion? Then, someone shone a flashlight on me. Are you okay? I got lost on the trail. Are you hurt? Thank you, I'm fine. My family must be waiting for me. I headed down to the parking lot at the foot of the mountain, but our car wasn't there. Had Henry and Eleanor left without me? No way. As I stood there, dumbfounded, I saw a faint image of Sophie where our car should have been. Sophie. I ran towards her, but my body passed right through. I couldn't embrace her. Sophie looked sad as if she wanted to tell me something. I felt she had a message for me. Then, I realized something was very wrong. If we had been separated, they would have reported me missing. The area should have been in uproar, but no one was looking for me. The parking lot was silent and deserted. Did Henry and Eleanor not even try to find me? What does this mean? Sophie must have appeared to show me this. I went to the station and took a train home. I noticed people staring at me curiously but was too preoccupied to care. I quietly opened the door and peeked inside. I could hear Henry and Eleanor's voices, unnaturally cheerful. I sneaked into the next room and observed them through a gap in the sliding door. They were drinking and laughing, unconcerned that I hadn't returned. We did it. No more of her depressing face, Henry said. I wonder how she's doing now, shivering in the mountains. Just thinking about it makes me laugh, Eleanor replied. Sarah is so slow, she'll never make it back. It's going to be extra cold tonight. Imagine her alone and cold out there. We'll tell the people she ran off with another man, then file a missing person report. When will we get the insurance money? It'll take a few years before she's declared legally missing. If only her body were found, we'd get it faster. Let's say she called from the mountain, then they'll find her sooner. My son is so clever, Eleanor praised. Hearing this, I trembled with anger. I couldn't believe they had planned this. I listened to their conversation unnoticed. I was a fool to ever think of them as family. Make sure to cry at the funeral. You didn't shed a tear for Sophie, Henry said. Well, I wasn't sad, Eleanor replied nonchalantly. My heart pounded with a mixture of betrayal and fury. How could they be so heartless? I knew I had to act, but I needed a plan. I slipped out of the house quietly, my mind racing. I would not let them get away with this. Sophie had shown me the truth, and I owed it to her to seek justice. I would go to the authorities and tell them everything. With Sophie's memory as my strength, I would expose Henry and Eleanor for what they were. I would not be their victim. I would fight back. For Sophie, for myself, and for the justice we both deserved. Sophie wasn't cute. She looked just like Sarah. I never wanted kids. They're just annoying. Hearing this, I burst open the sliding door. The two of them looked at me in surprise. It's you. Wow, Henry stammered, backing up against the wall. Eleanor covered her head with a throw. They looked at me as if they had seen a ghost. And perhaps I did look like one, covered in mud, with torn clothes and scratches. I'll haunt you, I declared, my voice cold and unwavering. They shivered in fear. It wasn't me. Blame Henry, Eleanor cried. What? You agreed. Mom was the one laughing about how cold it must be, Henry shot back, selling out his mother. What if I get haunted? Eleanor whimpered. Henry and Eleanor began babbling, pleading, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Please go to heaven. Their terror was almost pitiful. I realized they must have seriously thought they had sent me to the afterlife. I'm not about to make it that easy for you. I'm still alive, I stated, lifting my foot to show them. They looked utterly bewildered. What was your plan, leaving me in the middle of the mountains? I demanded. I just wanted to fulfill your wish, Henry mumbled. My wish? You wanted to see Sophie, right? I wanted to send you to her. It was out of kindness. I was speechless. Did they think that excuse would hold up? I heard your entire conversation, I informed them. Their faces turned even paler. Of course, I'll be divorcing Henry. I can't stay here, not with my life on the line. Too bad you won't get the insurance money. But, that's... Henry stammered. I recorded your conversation. I'm taking it to the police. What? Henry and Eleanor gasped in unison. I'll consult a lawyer, and you'll face the consequences. What consequences? Sarah's fine. We didn't commit any crime, Eleanor blurted out, still trembling. I won't let this go unpunished. Perhaps seeing Sophie gave me strength for knowing your evil intentions, but I felt a newfound power within me. I wasn't going to lose. Still unable to believe I was alive, Eleanor peeked out from under her throw at Henry and me, still trembling. I didn't bother with their stunned faces and began gathering my belongings to leave the house. I had no destination in mind but managed to find a no-frills hotel. I was grateful for the savings I had hidden before marriage. Henry and Eleanor didn't know I had savings. They would have demanded it if they did. The next day, I visited the police and a lawyer's office. Abandoning a healthy adult in the mountains might not constitute abandonment, but intentionally leaving someone in a dangerous place was illegal. Some punishment was inevitable, my lawyer said. I could claim damages for emotional distress. My recording of their conversation led to their arrest for fraud and assault, resulting in a criminal sentence. The divorce was finalized, and I claimed compensation and damages. As Richard advised, I had secretly saved money, slowly transferring small amounts from our living expenses account to another. Even though the savings were from after marriage, all payments were made to me, leaving Henry with nothing. I found a place to live and a job. I'll never overcome the grief of losing Sophie, but I cherish the happy memories we shared. As long as I have these memories, I won't be lonely. Sophie saved my life. She wanted me to live. I'm the only one who can cherish her memories. I'm not alone. Sophie's smiling face is always with me. Mom, I love your smile, Sophie often said. So I'll keep smiling, the smile Sophie loved, and move forward. The content of the story is genuinely moving and evokes strong emotions. It is a tale of loss, betrayal, and, ultimately, the rebirth and resilience of the human spirit. Here are some personal viewpoints on the story. 1. Loss and grief. The story begins with the profound sorrow of a mother who has lost her beloved daughter. This loss is not just the absence of a loved one but the loss of a part of herself. The feeling of emptiness and relentless pain is depicted very realistically. It's a deeply relatable and intense emotion that many can understand, but few can fully articulate. 2. Betrayal. Discovering that Henry and Eleanor, her closest and most trusted people, had planned to harm Sarah is a massive shock. This betrayal amplifies her pain and despair. It highlights the harsh reality that those closest to us can sometimes cause the most significant harm. 3. Strength of spirit. Sarah overcomes betrayal and grief by finding strength in the memory of her daughter, Sophie. Sophie's ghostly appearance is a source of strength, encouraging her to stand up and fight for justice. This illustrates the incredible power of the human spirit and the ability to rise above adversity. 4. Journey of self-rediscovery. After everything, Sarah decides to divorce Henry and start anew. She finds a job and a place to live, beginning to rebuild her life. This journey of self-discovery affirms that no matter how challenging life gets, we can always stand up and move forward. 5. Message of hope and resilience. The story delivers a powerful message of hope and resilience. Despite the horrific events she endured, Sarah never gives up. She not only survives but also finds new meaning in her life. This encourages us never to give up and find reasons to keep going. 6. Maternal love. The story centers around the theme of maternal love. Sarah's passion and memories of Sophie become her driving force. It reminds us of the strength of family love and the unbreakable bond between mother and child. The story's content is profound and inspiring. It's not just a tale of loss but also a story of recovery and self-discovery. It is a testament to the strength of the human spirit and our ability to overcome any hardship.